most of the stuff that I want to see, I'm not going to see, I know.
The most important thing that he was going to try and retrieve, and the thing that he said he wanted to be able to take with him if he had a chance, was his teddy bear. When he was young, he was so attached to that teddy bear. Now he's an adult, and the first thing he said is, you know, he wanted Boo Boo, his bear.
Well, that story hit me right here. I still have my childhood, or really my teddy bear from when I was just a wee baby. His name is T-Bear, T-E-A. So that just, that hit me so hard. And these are just a few of the stories of the people whose lives have been broken into pieces by the LA fires.
Oh my, it's just too much. Everybody on this block would have dinner together, and if somebody got sick, we brought them food. During the pandemic, Jack, next door who you just saw, would do a Trader Joe's run. It's like nothing you find anymore. So it's not just like the house, it's the whole, we'll never have it again. I mean, I don't think we'll rebuild. There's nothing to come back to.
Hi, my name is Suri Crow, and you're watching the Midas Touch Network. Tired of hearing about the wildfires yet? Well, unfortunately, this is just the beginning. Our planet is melting and flooding, etc. The catastrophic fires California is experiencing aren't the result of just one specific thing, but more like a concoction of multiple factors: overpopulation, overdevelopment, bad policy, and yes, the big daddy of them all, climate change. We can't ignore it, even though millions of us want to.
Southern California is not remotely the only tinderbox part of the world, but it's an especially flammable one. And not just because of droughts, but because of their persistence. The Southwest U.S. has been in a mega drought since 1999. It's the primary reason we're seeing so much more wildfire all across the U.S. West and up into Canada. Then there is the tornadic power of the winds, most notably Southern California's Santa Ana. Those ferocious atmospheric rapids get their power by being forced to move through narrow channels in the mountains of northern Mexico and Southern California. Everywhere, the planet showed signs of heat swoon last year, as mean temperatures for the first time exceeded the 1.5 degrees centigrade threshold above pre-industrial levels, a benchmark for extreme warning. The result was a year that saw record high levels of water vapor, methane, and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, record low expanses of sea ice around Antarctica, and record oceanic temperatures in the North Atlantic, Indian, and Western Pacific Oceans. These high global temperatures, coupled with record global water vapor levels, meant unprecedented heat waves and heavy rainfall events. That rainfall, interspersed with droughts, is one more mechanism that leads to wildfires. Such a boom and bust cycle means a lot of lush greenery that grows in the rainy times, and a lot of dead leaves, trees, and other tinder that gets left behind as fuel when things dry out.
SoCal hasn't had rain in over 8 months. 8 months. That is a serious drought. So there was plenty of tinder to burn between all of those homes populated all over the peaks and valleys of the Los Angeles hills. Now, despite Trump's and MAGA accusations that raking and controlled burns would have prevented the catastrophic wildfires, according to the Washington Post, experts said that several key factors, including urban sprawl, a resistance to clearing vegetation around homes. In other words, homeowners did not want to clear vegetation, plants, trees, etc., because they like the privacy, and a water system that's simply not designed to combat multiple major blazes at once, left LA exposed to disaster. As climate change fuels record heat, leaving the hillsides primed for wildfires to grow swiftly into massive conflagrations, these factors led to catastrophe. And those Santa Ana winds were blowing at more than 80 miles per hour, some of them blasting at 100 miles per hour, which prevented aircraft from getting up and tackling the blazes. They weren't able to extinguish those fires at the outset. And I've heard so much criticism like, why weren't firefighters getting airborne, etc.? And then the elephant that the fossil fuel industry and the Republican Party refuses to acknowledge: climate change, which is all going together there. Take a listen to Peter Kalmus. He is a climate scientist for NASA, as well as a climate activist who lived in Altadena, California, and fled when he saw the alarming data showing the impact of the climate crisis on his own California community.
We have to acknowledge that this is caused by the fossil fuel industry, which has been lying for almost half a century, blocking action. They're on the record saying that they will continue to spread disinformation and continue to attempt to block action. They've known the whole time that the planet would get hotter like this and that impacts like this fire would happen. And then a point I really wanted to make in the piece, which they wouldn't let me make, is that this is still just the beginning. It's going to get way worse than this. 2 years ago, 2020, when that Bobcat fire happened, the whole time I was living in Altadena, it was getting hotter and more fiery and drier and smokier. And it just didn't feel like I could stay there. When you have a trend line, things getting worse every year, right? Like, where's the point where it breaks? You keep going and keep pushing the system, getting hotter and hotter, getting drier and drier, right? Emitting more and more carbon dioxide from burning fossil fuels. Eventually things break. I didn't expect my neighborhood to burn this soon. Again, I think everyone needs to understand, and I wish the New York Times would have let me make this point, that this is going to get worse. I can see that today just as clearly as I could see how hotter and drier and more fiery Los Angeles was getting. I think in the future, if we don't change course very quickly, and maybe it's even too late to avoid some of these much more catastrophic impacts. But I'm fully expecting heat waves to start appearing where 100,000 people die, and then maybe 1 million people die, and then maybe more after that as things get hotter and hotter, because there's no upper limit, right? We keep burning these fossil fuels. Fossil fuel industry keeps lying. The planet just keeps getting hotter. These impacts just keep getting worse. It's not a new normal. A lot of climate messaging centers around this idea that it's a new normal. It's a staircase to a hotter, more hellish Earth.
Peter Kalmus mentions an article that he recently wrote for the New York Times, where they, as in corporate legacy media, they didn't want him to be completely honest about the emergency climate crisis that we are all living in. Why? Well, because that upsets the Wall Street overlords that run media, hedge fund managers, fossil fuels, and big pharma. The next bit is from one of his other articles in The Guardian that I actually found super helpful and not so depressing. He writes, "Resistance is a choice: to commit to fight, to refuse to comply in advance. And on climate, every bit of extra fossil fuel burnt, every fraction of a degree of added heating matters. It's late and we've already lost a lot, but it will never be too late to fight. Get creative, get spicy, and fight on every front." What is giving me hope now? The thing that gives me hope, strangely, is that I've accepted the end of this form of profit-obsessed modernity. Extractive colonial capitalism has been a death cult for hundreds of years, and now the masks are off. I know humans can do much better than this, but before the new thing can emerge, we have to let go of this billionaire creating, planet overheating, healthcare restricting, genocidal thing that we have now. I hope to live to see something better arise, a society whose goal is the well-being of all, even though it will, unfortunately, be on a hotter planet. Yeah, what he's really talking about there is end stage or late stage capitalism, and that is where we are right now. We are going to see it sitting there on the dais with Trump at the inauguration, all of the oligarch overlords and their extractive colonialism capitalism taking the earth and taking humanity for all it's worth. Like bar no holds, just grabbing greed, and it's destroying everything around us. I'll share with you a little bit about my own past history. I grew up out west in Arizona, spent my summers in Southern California, and my own family lost a summer house to a huge wildfire years ago. And then the next home that my parents got, they got many miles away up in northern Arizona, and that house was in a wildfire evacuation zone several times. So that first house, by the way, burnt down to the studs. I remember going up there with my dad, and it was like the homes that you're seeing in LA right now. There was nothing left except for, I remember this really cute like honey pot, like pottery piece, and we took it as one of the few things that was left from this beautiful summer home where I spent years as a kid. It was so sad. So anyway, this second home that my parents got after that one burnt down up in northern Arizona was always at risk of wildfires, because Arizona, again, is also in the Southwest at high risk. And at this point, I was back on the East Coast working in TV news, and one of the fires that was encroaching, and I can't remember the name of it, honestly. I was talking to my dad one night on the phone, and he's like, yeah, this fire is like, I think it was like 25, 30 miles away. And he was like, yeah, we're keeping an eye on it, da 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 da. Well, the next day, to my far away, and would have given them plenty of time to get out, because it was a ranch house. We had horses, and one of those horses was mine. My dad and I kind of shared this horse, but he's one of my true loves. And so the next day, I find out that my parents had to evacuate. They had to leave our horses behind. So I was tripping. I was in this news unit with my photographer, and I'm like working on stories, and I'm like, I've got to get our horses out of there. So long story short, I was calling the sheriff's department and calling a horse rescue out in northern Arizona to try and get my horse and our horses out of there from across the country. I was so panicked. I was even talking about it now makes my heart race. Just the stress and the trauma. And so the good news is these incredible horse rescue people went up there with trailers to go and get several horses out that were out in pasture. They were able to rescue my beloved Putty, Patrick James, and then my mom's horse. So we were able to get them out safely. It was like a wild thing. Like, I'll give myself props, but really the people who did the rescuing. So huge, props to everyone going in and taking care of all these animals. And once again, always to the first responders. So just why am I even sharing this story with you? Because 1/3 of U.S. homes are living in wildfire zones, according to the U.S. Forest Service. And California is now seeing 61 more fire days than it did in the 1970s. So this is not cyclical. This is not normal. This is climate crisis. We are living in it. I hear, some of my more right-wing friends are like, oh, this is just, this is the way it is. The earth, we had an ice age. No. This is human caused. And we're looking at it right now out in Los Angeles. This is not the way things are supposed to be. And so Lee Zeldin is a guy who has been paid by fossil fuel companies. He is Trump's pick for EPA director, and he's been up on the Hill for his confirmation hearings this week. Take a look at his report card from the League of Conservation Voters, you guys. It's terrible. He has an average of voting 14% in favor of pro-conservation legislation during his time in Congress. So that should tell you everything you need to know about exactly why Trump chose him to run the EPA, to destroy it, and to tear apart the regulations for clean air and water. And, so what do? It's easy to feel hopeless. I often do. I'm like, what do we do to resolve this? I think we need to have calm conversations with our friends and family. One of my best friends is a MAGA woman. I know, come at me in the comments. How could you be best friends with someone who's MAGA? I don't have a lot of them left, I'll be honest with you. But she's one who's still in my circle. She has lung disease. She's also a breast cancer survivor. She can't go anywhere without her inhaler. And so, I think a conversation I would like to have with her in the near future is how does she feel about somebody like Lee Zeldin and Trump dismantling the EPA?
We'll be awaiting the new president's signature as soon as he is sworn in. A dramatic show of force meant to set the tour tone of next few years. Trump is unlikely to wait until he reaches the Oval Office to bring out his sharp pin after missing on the campaign trail of placing on tiny desk on the inauguration platform to sign his orders. Some will await him at the U.S. Capitol immediately after his swearing in. Yet the new era will be felt far beyond the walls of Capitol, where Trump will be sworn in indoors. Due to expected bitter cold, the executive mansion